Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lula. That was our producer, Shane Schillerberg's pandering to our next guest, Cynthia Frelund from the NFL Network with the Detroit Lions clip. Cynthia, how are you this morning?
I mean, it works every time. I love it. Thank you. It works every time, you know?
Cynthia, I'm going to start again. We're going to stay in your wheelhouse here. You're one of the analytics queens, right? You understand numbers and trends, and we're starting to see it a lot more in college football as well. But even for as much data as you've accrued, do you ever think sometimes just take the points?
You know, that's like the misnomer, right? It's not always that you should just go for it and not take the field goal, not take the points, as you're saying. It's really about, like, making a decision and just having analytics be a little bit more helpful with you making a decision given the circumstances. It's just more data. It doesn't tell you what to do. Like, it's a good point that you bring up, but it's not always more advantageous not to take the point.
Cynthia, I wanted to get into the big news we had yesterday with a couple of trades with wide receivers. More impactful to their respective teams, Davante Adams to the Jets or Amari Cooper to the Bills?
Well, I think for different reasons, each one is impactful. So Amari Cooper, I mean, it's basically a song they acquired him for. So for the return on investment, that was absolutely insane. But making Aaron Rodgers happy factor, I think that can't be underestimated at all. So, while Amari Cooper is maybe more of like a good football move from the standpoint of what you have to give up, et cetera, I mean, making Aaron Rodgers happy, you've seen him love Davante Adams for, many, many years. So that's going to be a nice reunion. Maybe just making Aaron happy. He likes to pretend he didn't have a lot of sway in terms of management, but maybe he really did.
I promised myself I wasn't going to talk to you about quarterbacks, but I have to ask about quarterbacks. Can this, other than a deep playoff run, with as much control as Rodgers has seemed to have over this franchise, can the fan base, like, it's win a ton or bust, right? This can't end well for this fan base and Aaron Rodgers relationship without some signature. They're going to have to win a ton, because it seems like, and it's a weird fan base to do this with, he has an awful lot of control.
Yeah, every organization is run so differently. So this one, we're starting to see areas where they're willing to cede control and where they're not. And, this is a fan base they were so excited ahead of last season and so disappointed with the Achilles injury after 4 snaps. And now it feels like that just added such a level of make it or else this whole thing is a bust. It really, I actually, unfortunately, because it's an injury, but I think that did add to everything we're seeing. And then now it just feels so tense, and that tension is rubbing off into just, the fan base is being like, okay, well, put your money where your mouth is. Like, let's see it.
Cynthia, I asked this question, I think, of DB earlier in the week, but in that division, you're probably not getting more than one playoff team, I wouldn't think. Like, how are you looking at the chances of the Jets to actually overtake the Bills in the AFC East?
That's going to be a tall task for a number of reasons, but not the least of which is, I will say, the 7 teams being in the playoff does help because now you have that extra slot. And if you look at, if you think about the AFC this year, there's so many teams, like there's, some elite teams, and then there's like a big gap, and then there's some bad teams. Like the middle class, if you will, of the AFC is not so great. So I think that does actually help the Jets' chances of making the playoffs. Just because, think about it, the South. Who's going other than the Texans? No one, right? Then you have the West. Like, maybe the Chargers sneak in, I guess, right? Like, but when you think of the Chargers, are you like, yeah, that's a playoff team? Because I don't know, right? So just because of that, it would seem that the North is a tough division, but the Bengals are not performing. So it's to me, I think they might sneak in because there's no middle class of the AFC.
Okay, so Cynthia, let me ask you this. I'm glad you brought up the Bengals because both 2-4, would you more likely bet on the Jets being able to sneak in or the Bengals?
Somehow the Jets are favored over the Steelers, Cynthia. I'm cringing over that.
This is a game the Jets win. You know what I mean? We've seen this before. Like, I'm not saying what I want or what there are some things now. You have the defense. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers are making some weird moves themselves. If it weren't for Davante Adams and all the trades yesterday, we would be talking way more about Russell Wilson now being the starter. Why? What are you doing? Right? Like. These are some interesting questions that the Steelers are posing as well, but it gets kind of brushed under the rug because of the other bigger, splashier things. But, look, I think I'd have to take the Jets in that situation just because I think their division is so down. Remember, they still get to play the Patriots and they still get to play the Dolphins. So that makes it a little bit easier, whereas the Bengals, do you want to play the Ravens? Because I don't. Maybe the Browns, sure. But, the Ravens, no. The Steelers, no. So it's just a more difficult – they just have a more difficult situation that they're in as opposed to the Jets, which is a little easier.
All right, I'm going to get off the quarterbacks, but I have to use it in the question. Which of these three games, Cynthia, is least about quarterback play? Lions-Vikings, Chiefs-Niners, or Jets-Steelers?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would probably say, look, only because, the Aiden Hutchinson news is so damning that I think that game is very much changed, and the quality of both teams are going to have to run the football. Aaron Jones, the fact that yesterday we saw Cam Akers return back to the Vikings means probably not going to see Aaron Jones. Just reading the tea leaves here, right? Maybe we do, but
he didn't look great at the tail end on the sidelines.
That's right. So again, my point is the run game for them has been a stabilizing force that's helped Sam Darnold escape pressure. And Aaron Jones is a big part of that. I don't know if you can plug and play someone else in there, even someone with experience with the head coach. So I think both defenses really dictate the tone of this game. The Lions' O-line is excellent. Is the blitzing, pressure-happy Vikings defense going to be able to get pressure on Jared Goff or not? Because if the Lions can run, the Vikings will have a hard time of beating them. But on the other side of the ball, if there's no pressure on Sam Darnold, they'll just pass all over the Lions. So I think that of those three games, I would think it's probably that third one.
Cynthia, my co-host here doesn't like asking about quarterbacks. I love asking about quarterbacks, so I'm gonna go back here for a second because he brought up Minnesota and Sam Darnold, and I'm curious if there is anything you saw in the data or analytics, because there's been a little bit of a revival of some of these quarterbacks that we kind of left for dead a little bit, whether it's like Baker Mayfield last year, or whether it's Justin Fields, which we mentioned with that weird Pittsburgh situation. I don't know what the Steelers are doing. Whether it's Sam Darnold. Like, we've seen a few guys, even, Joe Flacco a little bit last year, a little bit this year.
You could throw Goff in a little bit.
Yeah, and Goff from, a couple years ago now. But there's these guys that we left for dead that all of a sudden appear to be able to play quarterback again. Have you noticed any trends, or is that something you've looked at all to kind of see if there's any commonalities there?
Geno Smith, maybe?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the structure of their offense being able to support the things that they do well and minimize the things that they do bad, right? So do poorly. That's bad English. With Sam Darnold, I bring up the fact. He's gotten to operate from a clean pocket at the highest rate of his career so far. And it's not like Sam Darnold wasn't a good passer. It's just that Sam Darnold under pressure eroded in a different way than his team was able to support. Right? Everyone is worse under pressure. That's why we call it pressure. That's why you do it. And the things that he does that were not helpful with his skill set are now minimized on a team that has answers and has checkdowns that make sense to him. And by the way, has probably the best receiver in the league. That always helps, right? Commanding double, triple coverage for Justin Jefferson, and then giving all the space that Jordan Addison, et cetera, and now maybe T.J. Hawkinson will be back. Like there's a lot of options for him in this offense, and that really helps. And than some of these other guys. So that was the same kind of general message for Jared Goff. Clean pocket, lots of options in the pass game, and really rely on a strong foundation of run. Great. Same kind of thing. Baker had it a little differently because the Bucs they haven't proven to us that they're reliable runners. They're a reliable running team, but they had a lot of answers with top-tier receivers. So it's just supporting what this team or what this player does really well with the teammates and the kind of production that helps accentuate their positives and minimize their defenses or their deficiencies.
I get it. This one's in Lambeau, and I'm going to give you credit because I remember when you said this in the preseason. I was asking you about some darlings, and you told me to be us to be leery of kind of doing this through free agency in year 2 and the development of the Texans. And I say all that to say their expected points outcome says that they should not be 5-1. Jordan Love has the most touchdown passes per game of any quarterback in the NFL at 2.7. When you watch this matchup, which kind of one of those trends, in your opinion, plays out as you look at this game?
Unsexy to say, but it's really going to come down to who can more reliably run the football. Texans bring the most heat in the entire league. They're the number 1 pressure front. They have 2 guys who have over 25 pressures. They're the only team that has that kind of front. And Jordan Love, he has the biggest decrease under pressure of any quarterback in the league. So
incredible.
That has a relevant number of passes. Right?
You just had that in the old repertoire?
Exactly. So, the interesting part here is we know that, we've seen Josh Jacobs now become extremely efficient. First 3 games, it wasn't as efficient. Now he's really stepping up and becoming this reliable yards after contact rusher. And then on the same side, when Joe Mixon's healthy, 2 100-yard games and a touchdown in each one. It's just who can run, who can establish the run and control the clock. That's going to be who wins this game.
We're talking with Cynthia Frelund from the NFL Network. Cynthia, obviously one of the major stories this year is Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels off to a great start. How much pressure has that put on? So we saw Jerry Jones kind of act a little crazy yesterday with his talk radio show in Dallas. Obviously, there's been a ton of tension with Philadelphia and Nick Sirianni. How much of that is happening in a vacuum, and how much of that is happening as a result of the fact that they're now looking up to the Commanders in the standings?
I think Jerry Jones doesn't care. I don't know about I don't think he doesn't care. I don't think I think he's interested in it for the week that they play each other and whatever, but I don't think he's not looking at anyone else. If he doesn't have 17 wins, something's wrong, right? And there's more wrong than that this year. But in general, Jerry is his own man, right? When it comes to the Nick Sirianni's, there is a disconnect there. Maybe we'll hear about it at some point. Something's really weird. I don't know what it is, but I will say that this is a division right now where I actually think the Giants are kind of underrated given their they're a really good bad team. You know what I mean? They're of the bad teams. They're a much better bad team than it seems from their record. But I think it's more that all of these teams have Super Bowl expectations. The Cowboys and the Eagles have Super Bowl expectations ahead of this season. The Cowboys, whether or not it's rational, they have Super Bowl expectations every single season. So when you get to week 6, week 7, and things aren't looking good, this is on repeat. This script, I feel like I've seen this before. I've seen it last year, the year before, et cetera. So, this is it feels par for the course from the Cowboys for me.
So you're going to tell me 2 things can be true at once, or it is what it is. If I told you that I think the Ravens are the best team in the AFC, and I understand their playoff struggles, and I also understand that the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, and they're undefeated.
Yeah, right now, the problem is if the playoffs were to start today, it would be very hard to beat the Ravens. The problem is it's a long season, and in a one-game sample set in the playoffs, it's very hard when your defense is struggling. Patrick Mahomes has more success now when his defense is really good, even though some pieces of the offense are very questionable. So now you have in a one-game sample size, you're much better off if you have your elite quarterback. Let's just say, because both teams are exceptionally elite. They operate differently, but they're still elite. I just think the defense will make the difference in this. And the Ravens defense has not proven to me this season that they're reliable or as reliable as we've seen from the Chiefs so far.
Cynthia, I'm a 49ers fan here, so I'm going to indulge myself a little bit. As you've seen them kind of regress, whether it's from injuries or age or whatever, how do you view kind of their window to be a top contender? Do you still think that thing is open, or you think that thing's getting cranked shut on us a little bit here?
This year I think it's fine, and I'm actually not so worried about them this year. Like, again, long season. I will be curious to see. We need at least like one running back to be healthy for me to feel confident about that.
Yeah, geez.
That would be nice.
It would help. It would be nice. I mean, next man up really does work for Kyle Shanahan, but at some point you just, like, you don't have a man, so, like, then what, right? But, I think that this year they're okay. My fear is, we're talking if it's not this year or next year, it's just going to get really expensive really quick. So I'm more worried about their, you're going to have to pay Brock Purdy. There's just some things coming. The salary cap, the relief you get from a rookie, especially a rookie who was, such a low draft pick, that doesn't last forever, especially when you're going to have to pay him.
Cynthia, I get it. Tomlin as a home underdog, and he usually fares well. Again, I told you I was shocked that the Jets are favored. That's okay. Can Tomlin's culture, is that what we're banking on, where he can invite something this week as far as saying, hey, Russ is getting reps with the first team, could potentially start, what have you? This is an organization that can take on that distraction, considering we've been talking about this quarterback situation with them since the offseason?
If there is one, it's there. But I just don't know if I think that's sustainable for anyone. But I think that Russell feels like a tough sell. I mean, last year it just feels weird to come into a situation, even though he's not, they're not paying him. The Broncos are. It doesn't matter at this point. He's still it felt like every report early in the season was like, they have to say Russell's a starter. They have to, like, it felt very weird. Like, there was a weirdness there that felt like ego. And I'm not sure if this is ego or real or what. Then we don't know what's going on in here, and we'll never hear because it's Tomlin. But something is weird. That's my really deep analysis. It's weird, but I think if any culture can sustain it, it is his. He is the only one who I think the players would give that kind of leash to. Maybe Andy Reid, him and Andy Reid. That's about it.
I just want when they drop back for a pass, I just want the ball delivered on time, and to not always check and see if there was a flag because they hold the ball for about 55 seconds. Like, is that?
You're asking too much, DB.
That's doable though? Every play they have, I'm like, is there a flag?
I know. Well, it's funny. But watch the Texans. The Texans in the Green Bay game could be the flag leader of the year this year. Those teams, I'm like, come on.
You know what's interesting about them is for Green Bay, I noticed that for sure, because even in Malik Willis's first start, it was on national television, and I can't remember who they hammered. It was his first start, and their first 5 or 6 plays seemed like they averaged about 9 or 10 yards. There was a flag on every other play, and they still drove down and scored. I'm thinking either LaFleur is a genius or this team is something else. But it is crazy how good Green Bay is offensively, and they can't keep from having penalties.
Yeah, I don't know. At some point, your coach can't outcoach that many penalties. Like, you can only be in 1st and 20 so many times before you run out of plays in the playbook. This is the way it goes.
Panic mode in Cincinnati?
I say no because I don't know. Like, I feel like they don't. Yes, but also no. They're not a team where you don't get that Jerry Jones swing of emotions. Mm-hmm. So it may not be great, but it's not like, I wouldn't say full. It's like, oh crap, not like hit the eject button yet.
Do you eat the money in Cleveland and make a decision at quarterback?
I do. I eat the money. You eat it. I think that's what it looks like. They're taking their medicine. It's unsustainable.
Cynthia, speaking of eating the money, right? So we saw, you mentioned Russell Wilson. Denver had to eat the money with Russell Wilson. We've obviously seen this disaster clown show in Cleveland. We've seen, for different reasons, a guy that just got paid in Tua in Miami, and they're not able to get their money's worth out of that contract right now. We've, to a much lesser extent, seen Jalen get paid in Philadelphia, and now he's having a conflict with his head coach. Like, at some point, and then you mentioned Brock Purdy's going to have to get paid. Like, at some point, do we see any correction in the market where we're like, hey, maybe we shouldn't pay every single one of these guys $40 or $50 million a year? Or is it just we're so terrified of not having a quarterback, we'll even pay the mediocre ones?
My dogs have a lot of thoughts on this. I think what we see is a little bit of a what's the word? Like the guarantees will be less. Like we won't see the type of guarantees we saw even for Kirk Cousins. Obviously Deshaun having the most guaranteed contracts, but what I do think is the rookie pay scale was an attempt to not have this happen, and now people are just like delaying their bad decisions for later. But at some point, like, you have to take responsibility for your decisions. So while we won't see as much guaranteed money, I think people are like, well, we're going to have to figure it out one way or another. And I just don't know if we see like rocket ship hockey stick explosion still, but I still think this is going to be the state of the league until the dynamics of how contracts are created change.
Game of the week, Texans and Packers, or Niners and Chiefs? Or do you have another one? Lions, Vikings, maybe? No,
not that one. That one was upward. Honestly, I'm just glad they're not in the same window so we can like watch them all. My only reason for saying, and I know you're a Niners fan, and I don't mean to offend you. I'm just curious to see if these young quarterbacks who are actually, it's weird because they're playing the exact same number of games. I'm interested to see how they play out. No offense to Chiefs or to Niners. I've seen that game quite a few times, and it's a great game. But I'm more excited to see these new guys. Like, what we never get to see the Packers play the Texans. We just never see it. It's only happened. This is the sixth time it's happened since the Texans have become a franchise. And now you have C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love playing the exact same number of games. This is like the future of the league. I think that one's a little bit more like, interesting. Let's see what happens. I already know that Patrick Mahomes is capital E elite. I already know that the Niners are epic. I already know that this is a probable Super Bowl, preview. But okay, what about the one that I have no idea about?
Well, Cynthia, nobody bats 1,000. You were doing great until the end there. No, we appreciate your time as always. Great stuff, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Thanks so much for having me. Bye, guys.
That's Cynthia Frelund from the NFL Network.
Just the stats.
Right off
readily available.
Right off the dome. Yeah. She makes you look like you forget things. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulu. We got more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.